The theme that we all thought about in listening to the Firebird music was death and rebirth.
This piece of music served as the perfect storytelling device to showcase that in a visual tone poem.
The music was so powerful that immediately he was telling a very strong story.
My starting point for the piece is working from the storyboard that comes from, in this case, it came from the directors because they're wonderful draftsmen. So they really posed out the look of the movie. So for anybody starting this film was an advantage because we could actually see their vision rather clearly at the beginning as to what they wanted. Then I go into the process of developing what's called a color script. And it's kind of like the storyboard, only it's on a smaller size scale. But basically I'm trying to do a little color illustration for every scene in the movie, from beginning to end. So we get a sense in advance of actually going in and doing the scenes, how they should look and how they should play.
What was really interesting for us is how we could show nature. Because nature in this piece is not only a background, this is the main character. And because we found nature is represented by 3 characters, the technical challenge was to show that those characters were not just applied on background, but they were moving with the background.
Firebird was really probably the most challenging of all the segments from an effects standpoint. The lava creature that we had to create, we looked at a lot of live action reference, and it dawned on us that there's always a crust forming on lava, and we went after creating a series of elements that combined gave us this sort of a live, fiery creature that had this cooling crust that was always forming on it.
I had to literally get familiar with animating molten lava, fire, and smoke and debris, as well as animate this character. But it was all traditional hands-on animation. All of it had to be fitted in and executed by hand.
With the sprite in Firebird, we set out to create a character that 50% of it was made up of effects elements. As she trails off, we needed to try and figure out a way to blend her into the background and make it appear that she wasn't a separate character from nature, but she was nature.
Typically, when you do a character for a film, you have a model sheet that you show the character all different angles and different positions. But on the sprite, we really couldn't do that because each scene, she looks different. Her body changes. Her face pretty much stays the same, but her body changes length and proportion and mass. So we couldn't really do a classical, typical model sheet on her.
She's not a character in a normal sense, but she's an entity. So we had to define her different functions depending on the scene itself. And basically, I drew a chart where I broke her down into 7 main areas, each one defined by her function at scene. She's actually a very traditionally animated character, hand-drawn with lines. That just gets us as far as her having a line quality and a color quality. What we needed to do was give her texture and give her the elements that made her part of the environment she was in. We did this by layering her with hand-drawn effects elements in the sense of tones and highlights, with hand-drawn particles moving off her, little leaves and branches and pieces growing from her body, and also with CG elements in the form of particle systems, which we could make them be just single blades of grass, or they could be larger flowers and blossoms growing from her body.
Paul and Gaetan's vision of the elk was that he was going to be real royal and majestic, like the king of the forest. I was trying to capture that nobility, being able to walk regally and to bow down, and with his eyes to say, come on, get up, or a little tilt of the head, try to give words of encouragement just through his body language. So that's a challenge of a character that doesn't have dialogue.
Antlers are stiff, they're very difficult to draw in a character that's moving slowly.
Interestingly enough, this was the same problem that Walt and his team had on Bambi, how to turn the intricate design of a deer's antlers in space.
The antlers were done by CGI on top of the traditional animation in order for me to figure out the eye line and to figure out how this thing is going to move through space.
The project in itself, I feel, is a little bit unique because it's a very collaborative project. The character animators were initiating effects animation. The effects animators were adding to the characters. The cleanup artists were building on the design of the characters and giving a very sinuous Art Nouveau feeling to the line, because there's a lot of very curving lines. All along the way in this project, the artists have brought a lot to it, and they've really enhanced and built upon that.
The integration between CGI animation and traditional work, I think, made a very good marriage.
Collaboration is the name of the game in Disney animation, and particularly the end of the film when the sprite is going up to the mountain and we're combining traditional animation with particle animation, with the backgrounds and the grass blowing, which is done with the CGI process. And all of these things working together and everybody cooperating and working together, we come up with something I think that is brilliant.